And we're live. You're watching Coaching Chats with Marina and Caroline.
I'm Marina Baranowski of the Coaching Marina.
And I am Caroline Day with Safe Data Change. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. Oh, my friend. So please give us an update. Are you feeling better?
I am feeling much better. I'm actually just writing Safe Data Change on my name thing because I always
Do it.
forget. Yeah. But yeah, I'm recovering from a sore throat congestion that happened. It started a little bit before spring break and it's lingering, but all things considered, I think I'm doing well still. How are
Well,
you
very
doing?
good. I'm doing okay. Doing okay. Things are always changing in this household. People coming, people going, and we're just, world keeps spinning. So,
Yeah, but it's nice because this year you're spending more time with your children already,
yes, spending more time with my children and family, and it's just been a very good year so far.
That's great. Well, today we're going to talk about the influences of social media.
Big
Since
topic.
we're not in a lot of social media applications, we're going to talk about the ones we do know. We're
Yes.
going to talk just about the influence of, the immediate social media that we use, like Instagram, Meta, LinkedIn, and we're going to touch upon just, some of the social media that our children use now or have used in the past and how that has influenced them as individuals and as part of the society. Like, how do you feel about social media? Is that something that you use a lot, don't use a lot?
Social media is something a little foreign to me, and it's only been very recently that I have been dipping my toe into the social media world. And it's something that scares me. It's something that excites me. It's something that is just something uh, visually, instead of it being, it used to be very social, I felt. And where when I was in social media a lot is when like Facebook started. Like I had, see, I'm from the old school MySpace. So that's where my social media stuff started was like, you connected with the people you knew. And then when Facebook, you connected with the people you knew. And so it really was just, to exchange pictures and to see how people were doing. And it really was very social. So I enjoyed that aspect where I could see the friends, people I knew, friends from high school, where I could see what everyone was doing, say hi, wish everyone a happy birthday. Like it was a very social thing.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the way, I want to say probably like, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, it started to switch a bit to a more of an influence where you weren't seeing so much of your friends, you were seeing other people, like they were pushing a lot of information that they thought you might like. And you're like, well, this is interesting. I don't really know who this person is, but all right, they're cooking something and that looks really delicious. So let's see, and then it started. So instead of it being very a social thing, it really turned into more like an interest media. So now everything that you see and are being pushed into your feed are things that you've lingered on, that you wanted to, you watched the whole video of and like, whoa, you must like, I don't know, cooking videos, or you must like, dogs, you must like, so they start pushing you this, and it has been less social and more, uh, almost a very salesy feel to it to me. So I pulled back from it, a few years ago.
No, that was such a good way of explaining it. Thank you. There was a lot of wisdom in this explanation. Because it's true. Like before, you just wanted to connect with people.
That's it.
As an immigrant, it was the best thing that they've ever invented because I could see my entire family from Brazil, cousins. and get updates on everybody. I knew when my cousins were getting pregnant, when they had their babies. And so it was a lot of, social engagement and interaction with family and friends who were living abroad specifically, so I could get, an update on a friend that lives in Italy because it was like right there. And it was kind of like a free dating app too, because it was when people would like, I mean, they still do it, right? Like where you could see someone's photo and you could reach out to them, without ever knowing them and you don't have to call them. And so that was definitely like how my experience with social media started also. It was really just to see people, to see pictures, to get connected to family members, and that was really awesome. But like you said, like because people started using to market what they were good at, to market their product, Meta started, Facebook still started their marketplace. And so you were able, and then there were ads that were added to the social media platform. And so you would watch ads, and then you started seeing videos more and more of people engaging and showing more of their lives than just like photos, than just, their birthdays or events that were happening. Some people started using it to broadcast, their day to day. And then the more that was available, the more people used it. Like at first it was a marketing a strategy, if you will, right? Because people were showing how to do, how to cook, or people were showing how to make things, and people are showing how to do makeup, and so you're learning from these people. And then you talked about something else, which is, the application actually knowing what you're clicking and where you're spending time on, and then feeding more of that into your phone or your, you know, um, whatever machine you're using, right? Your
Yeah,
computer
yeah.
is just feeding into more, because now it's like understanding the trend and understanding what you're using and what you're talking about and what you're spending your time on to generate more of that. And so now, if you're simply talking about something next to your computer or your phone, all of a sudden you see, a marketing commercial or something, or you start seeing more of what you like. If you're watching cats and dogs, then you start all of a sudden seeing more cats and dogs, and so they start using the algorithm to catch your attention longer and longer and longer. So let's talk about that. Like,
Yeah.
what do you think has changed? Like when you go on social media today, I can actually guilty. I can go on the rabbit hole, right? Like I'm starting to watch something, and then all of a sudden, or since I'm watching something, and I think it's even better now because they are thinking of my algorithm. And so they feed me more of what I like to watch, so it's really, really easy. It's at your fingertip. Like, what has been your experience with social media these days?
Well, these days, I tend to, I like a lot of coaching, inspirational, um, really good energy vibes in my feed. So if I see something that is not that, I won't linger on it. I will push it aside. And then recently, Instagram has in their Reels section where you could change your algorithm. You can actually remove things from what they were pushing. So I go in there every once in a while and I add things that I would like to see, or that I actually take off things that have been part of my algorithm. So I play around with that recently. But I think it has become so money driven that even in those inspirational thoughts or stuff, it is always looking to be able to make additional money. And that feeling is not a good feeling for me. So and that I feel is more on Instagram. I don't really go into Facebook all too much, but when I do go into Facebook, I only click on the friends button. There's a tab down at the bottom where you could just get your friends posts instead of your regular feed. So I curate my own viewing, if you will, um, because that is something that I had to do for myself. Because there was a time, like you said, rabbit hole. Like I would spend hours just scrolling or just hitting the Reels tab and just letting it go. Like, what's next? What? And time went by so quickly, and it didn't offer me anything. And what I started to feel was that I was being influenced. And this is that word influence, like influencers, like that's a real thing. So when you're seeing something, instead of going, is this a true statement or is this something that resonates with me? Most people listen to it and go, well, that must be truth, and then they absorb it. No one is. It's very rare that someone will go, okay, I'm going to see if this is something that resonates with me. I'm going to pause and take a minute. Like, did that or what did that trigger in me? Do I feel anxiety? Do I feel nervous? So I had to really take a pause because I was coming off of social media sometimes, like with with that, oh my gosh, that feeling, just from whatever it was being feeded to me.
I see. Yeah, no, I can only imagine that. Thank you for sharing because I think that's important for people to know what kind of feelings can come up when you're just on the internet and
Sure.
it's just feeding you, um, and it's like involuntary, because you're just there. I think it still happens to me. Yes, there are a lot of people who have used the influencing of social media to their benefit.
Sure.
They learned it, they understand it, and they have used this platform to their benefit, to promote their product, to promote their services. And I think that's a beautiful thing. There has been so many people who have also used it to as just as a catch for, to get into their business. Some people they promote ads so that once you click on the ad, it goes directly to their page and their buying page. And so they have invented things like funnels, for you to go through and have access to their products. And I think it's a great thing because it has helped a lot of people,
Sure.
start their business and collaborate with really big brands. And I think that that's, there's a lot of good in this influencer world.
Sure.
Um, if people know how to use it well, if people use it intentionally, because I do follow a lot of people that I love because they are so intentional about what they're putting out, who they're working with, and what is it that they're talking about. And so I think that's why social media changed so much. It changed from being just a site where you go to see your friends to a site where you can learn, a site where you can understand a product or understand how people sell. And so I actually learned a lot about, what it is that I want to show people. I remember when I started my Instagram, Safe Day to Change, at Safe Day to Change. I was not a coach yet, but I remember I wanted to see what would it be like for me to post every day. And so I started posting every day. I think I posted every day for like a year, but then it kind of became like a personal thing because I didn't know what else to post. Like I was posting things and people were calling me and saying, are you a coach now? Like what's going on? Like I see that you started this Instagram account. And I was like, I just started an Instagram account. I wanted to see for myself if I was able to post on a consistency basis. But then it became almost like I started pressuring myself to
Mm.
be there. I started to like, what am I going to do for tomorrow? What am I going to do for the next day? And I didn't even have a business for it. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to have to stop. Like, this is not genuine. This is
Right.
not authentic. I went from let me test it out to now I'm pressuring myself to show up at a certain way. And this is not what the intent, the initial intent was for. And so because it changed, I kind of stopped using it. And then I went back only after I quit and I started really like using safe data change after I found my company. But I remember like how much pressure you have once you start to put yourself on social media because it's like you start thinking, what is it that like, what if I do stop? Like, what does that mean? What does that mean for my algorithm? And so it wasn't like I didn't have, a product and I didn't know about my services yet. And so it still felt very mechanic. And I know that there's a lot of people that probably still think that too, like because they have a social media, they feel like they need to use the social media for something because everybody else is using it for something. You see a lot of people using it so intentionally. So you try to mimic that, but each person is different and each person will have their own idea of what social media is, but because of the pressure that people put on themselves, I know I have put a lot of pressure on myself in the past to be on social media, to be engaging so that people still engage with my posts. And then I was like, you know what? I'm only going to post when I have something to say, when I have experienced something, and when I feel like it's important for me to put this message out there. And I let go of this pressure, but I know a lot of people still feel like you're heavily influenced by having to be there, by having to position yourself or have, if you have a platform already, I know I feel pressure to be in that platform so that it just doesn't kind of run out and disappear.
Right.
Do you feel that pressure also? Like if you have, at the coaching Marina, do you feel like you sometimes have to be there or no?
I do. I feel like I really need to be out there. And I'm just starting. So I feel like I need to do what you do, which is say, I have something to say. There's a message that is calling for me to put out, and I'm going to put it out and hope that it reaches and it resonates with those people that need to hear what I'm posting. And I think for what you had just said, which is really important to talk about because people feel that pressure for themselves. It's not like someone is pressuring you to post every day. It is social media, Instagram, all of the platforms. Once you get on it, this self pressure happens. But what are we trying to get? What are we trying to achieve by doing that? Some people find their own self-worth through it. Some people find that they get a twinge of happiness from when someone likes their posts or someone comments on their posts. They're getting some sort of accolade, maybe an attaboy, maybe a pat on the back that they needed to have from a stranger through the social media. And it's very, very tough to navigate when you don't get a reaction or you don't get a like, or maybe only you get 50 views. And suddenly you're like, well, that tanked. Why did that tank? It must be me, right? So all of a sudden this look inward on a negative level happens when there's many reasons why that can happen. It really is not a perfect system at all, social
Yeah.
media.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think, I mean, we are not super users, right? You
No,
and
no,
I have used it very little compared to other people. We don't understand the platform fully,
no.
but what I can say is this, it's there is a lot of influence because we're on it at least once a day. You
Sure.
know, we are influenced by it, whether we like it or not. And I love that you curate what you watch and what you don't. You're going to have to help me offline here
I
because I
will.
don't know.
No problem.
I think that's awesome that you can curate that. I think it's brilliant. And I think people, should do the same, like really be more intentional,
Yeah,
regardless of you getting a lot of views or not. There's a lot of people that, really become so famous. I didn't even know the story of Mr. Beast, and I recently read it on this book that I'm reading to
gosh.
uh, be, your future self now. And he talks about how he writes a letter to himself 5 years ahead, and he wanted to, become very famous, and then he does, but he makes these video like or made these but very common and like normal videos of like folding things a million times. I don't know, like I didn't see videos, but I know how he became famous just through this book. And you know, it got a lot of attention, so it really depends on what people are on social media for. If you want a lot of attention, you can get a lot of attention by doing a very minimum, you know. Um, but people also go there and don't get any attention.
Right,
It's a very vulnerable place to be because you're unintentionally comparing yourself to people that are getting attention. Maybe you're doing the same video as somebody else, and somebody else has a community already, has done a lot more, has been there for 5 years on the grind. And all you see is they have a lot of views and you don't have a lot of views. And so it's dangerous because we are comparing things that are not to be compared with.
right,
You, you cannot compare the influence of one person versus yourself. And you cannot compare your ideas and because your followers are completely different than other people's followers too.
yeah,
So it's very important for people to first curate what is coming in, but also understand what you're taking out of it and what you're putting out, and what is your intention behind the message that you're putting out. And I think that for me, it became more important what I put out versus how often I put out. For me, it became more important to this every single time I show up, it's authentic, or am I just to be here every day?
right,
And so that really changed for me. And I think it was a blessing really to be able to just be real because I feel like the people that are doing amazing on social media, they are really real. Like they're
right,
trying their best, but they are really like putting out, and I'm not talking about everybody, obviously, but a lot of people that are showing up genuinely themselves, and they know what their product is, they know what they're trying to do, and they have a plan, they have a strategy. They're doing well.
right,
And I think that's really the name of the game is the influence of social media being there and you understanding that influence and you being able to at least control it to the best of your ability. How is it that you want to be influenced by it? And
right.
how is it that you want to influence others? And
Yeah.
I think it's,
Super intentional, right? Being super intentional about it because there's many times that, I'm bored, and I'll open up the app. Like it almost like it wasn't even an intentional thing that I did. It was like, well, let me just open up the app. Let me just, kind of take myself out of this world for a minute and go into this other world. And I know there's a lot of people that do that. And I had to stop myself because, and again, I'm thinking like, because we were talking about like the cooking videos and stuff. Like I love cooking videos. But what I was noticing was like, wow, they have a nice kitchen. I'm like, how come my kitchen doesn't look like that? Or, oh, I
Mm,
look at that mixing bowl. Oh my gosh, that's a beautiful thing. Like, or like, you know what I'm saying? That's a really nice set. I love those pans. I can't afford those pans, but I love those pans. And instead of looking at the video of them, this is the recipe that they're making, I now am comparing myself to in what I have to what they have. And I was like, this is not where I feel good and aligned with. So if I'm not going into looking at a video for what its intent is to, let's just say, a recipe, then I'm not going to look at it. Or if I start feeling myself getting too self-deprecating, I'm gonna pass it by. This is where the intentional, being intentional in what you're allowing to bring in is very important because we are being bombarded with messaging, with images every day. You know, and for the most of the time, you're talking about, okay, you have Instagram, you have Facebook or Meta, you've got LinkedIn, which is its own other entity, and what happens over on LinkedIn, and YouTube being another place, where the intent was if you needed to know something or find out about something, I went to YouTube, right? It was like I have how-to videos, like how to do this, that. I can just go to YouTube, and that was the thing. You go on to YouTube now, and your feed is filled with the same stuff now that all the other social media. So everyone is pretty much on the same page with trying to push as much stuff into your head as possible. And you have to, I mean, I have to be very intentional with what I'm allowing to absorb because you can see something and it not hit you, and then you could see something and it really burrows its way in, or now becomes a belief that you have adopted because you saw a post, and now that because you saw that one post, now there's other posts that are being pushed to you, and now it becomes a belief of yours. So it is a very dangerous game, and being very intentional is a way to help for sure.
yeah. Well, I love what you said because, first of all, it's true. I haven't even thought about that, but it's so true. When we start watching certain videos, we start looking at the details of the videos, and all of a sudden, when you initially were there for one purpose, at the end of the video, you probably are paying attention to other things. And it's very human of us
Yeah.
to start comparing what they have versus what you have. I remember when I first, started out as a full-time coach that I was always comparing people's like office. Like I don't have an office. I still don't have an office a year later. But I remember comparing like people's office and having a nice microphone and, doing, certain things that I wasn't doing. And I had just started. And I think instead of turning it off, for me, it was more like it's time to do some internal work, some inner work, because I don't want to stop doing that. I want to learn. But if I'm paying attention to the wrong thing, it's time for me to do an evaluation and an assessment on myself. And so I would sometimes like write down, why do I feel this way? What is it that is bothering me that someone has that I don't? And I don't try to run away from those feelings. I normally lean in because jealousy is information.
Mm,
When you're jealous of someone or when somebody has something and you want it, that's information. And so I lean in a little bit and I go, why am I feeling this way? Why do I want this?
Right.
What is it that this person has that I don't? And why is it bothering me? Like instead of going, ooh, I want that. Like, how do I get that in 6 months? How do I get that in 3 months? So that I wouldn't feel a certain way. And that's the power that we have, right? That's the power as humans that we have, is to control our perspectives. We can continue to think a certain way, or we can change our ways and our perspectives. And so I try to do that, like, but now that you're saying, it totally makes sense. Like, you will watch someone cook something and you go, wow, these are beautiful pots and pans. Like, that is beautiful. And then all of a sudden you see yourself going on, a website to try to find the sampans, to
Yeah.
find out that you can afford them. And then you're like, but they're beautiful. Um,
I will tell you, I couldn't afford them. So I was like, but the thing was, is like, did I need them? And I think that was what I needed to come up with. Did I really need those pots and pans? Or was it something that was so nice that I wanted to have it? Like, what was it was triggered in me that I
yeah,
needed to evaluate? And I'm glad that you said that, because you do need to evaluate what you're feeling.
for
This
sure.
isn't something that have come to you and then you push aside. I've done that a lot. I do push that aside. I want to know why. Why do I need that when I have perfectly good pots and pans, and I cook all the time and my husband loves my food. So what's the need for these pans?
But that's beautiful though, right? Because in finding out other things that you desire, you
Sure.
really learn a lot about yourself as well. You know what I mean? Because there are things that I'm going to see on video that I'm just not going to fall in love with,
Very true.
And some people will and some people won't. And the thing about desire is, when you do have these desires, you learn more about yourself. And what I love about having access to all of this, where people didn't before, right? When there was no social media at all. Another part of the influence of social media is that it gives you access to options you never thought of before. There are so many options out there that it really overwhelms people. People
Yeah.
think that they want something. 6 months later, they see something else and they go, no, that's not what I want. Now I
Right.
want this other thing. And I think because there's so much information, so many options, it's actually not a good thing for us. Because if you keep on chasing something that is not available to you all the time, then you can't really focus on what is it that you do want,
Right.
because
Right.
all this other options start popping up, and then you lose focus on what you wanted in the first place. And if you lose your focus on what you wanted in the first place, because now you have something else, and now you want the next thing, and now you want the next thing. And it's not that that's not good. Like, I think it's important to always have something to chase. My point is, when you don't focus on achieving this one thing because you're so distracted by options, you end up achieving none of it. And I think that that's the biggest danger about options. There's a really good book. I think it's on Outliers, by Malcolm Gladwell, that he talks about um, going to a store and having options. So it was actually a grocery store. They did an experiment where they put, um, I think it was jelly or jams. They put a certain amount of jams for people to try. And when there were more options, less people bought. And when they went and shortened the options, more people bought.
Yeah.
Because when there's so many options and now you're trying everything, you end up not buying anything. But when there's like just four or five, now your options are limited. It's either like you get this or you don't. And there's a psychology behind it too. But the same thing happens with the internet and the influence of social media. When there's so many options, people are having a hard time choosing what to focus on because there's so much distraction and noise.
So true. So true. I like that though. I mean, considering when, and I'm just going through this store myself, if there are too many options, yeah, I'll either go with what I know instead of going with or even considering it's too much overwhelm. There's a decision um anxiety that happens when you have too many options. And when you're dealing with social media and as the things go and you're watching and you're scrolling and you're in this rabbit hole situation and you just hours go by, and you're just like what happened? What happened to all that time? There's not a lot um when you pick and choose what you're looking at and what you're being allowed to influence you, it definitely softens the influence and the impact when you are very intentional. Now, you said a few things, a lot of amazing things, by the way. But after you have a little bit of time in figuring out what you want to see and what you don't see. And you decide what is next in what you want to do. Let's just say you have a business, like we have a business, we want to show ourselves. It is important for us to know what we want to put out there, but the people that I'm trying to resonate with isn't everybody. And I had to take a look at it instead of saying what I am posting is going out. And I say this when I'm posting it, I want it to go to the people that are going to be, that it's going to resonate with. I want
Mhm.
someone to see and hear my words and that it will give them something and a good feeling that there's going to be a good energy behind all of my posts. And instead of going, I need to post every single day or that I need to, I don't have a hard and fast rule. When something feels really good to me, then I'll post. Okay. That's coming from posting. I don't find my worth with it. I don't find this is just another tool, and this is the whole thing about social media was supposed to be used as a tool to bring people together. And yes, it's brought the whole world together, but it's turned into something else now. And I think that as the individual who is consuming this, has to make those choices for themselves. And if it becomes too overwhelming, there are ways to separate. And you've spoken of it. If you're feeling a certain way, write it down, right? Journal it. Why am I feeling jealous? Or why am I feeling upset? Or why do I feel like nobody likes me? Or why do I feel, write this all down and start really going in and trying to figure out what these messages are trying to tell you. So obviously journaling, thank you for bringing that up. The other thing is being intentional and taking time away from it because we are so in not in the moment, in the world, in our space. And especially when you're sitting in a scrolling moment, you don't even realize what room you're in. You don't realize where you could be. Some people bring it as the bathroom, and then 2 hours later, and you're like, wait, what? Like some people don't even realize that they're in this world, breathing air and actually being present in this world. And then instead, they're in the social media piece. So if you see yourself doing that, it is time to start pulling yourself away from it and being intentional and how much time you're going to be spending in it.
It's so true.
I'm like, wait a second, am I in my bedroom? Am I in my
Unaware.
office?
Yeah, some people become unaware of their physical environment
Surroundings. Yeah.
because they're so focused on the environment and the virtual
Yes.
environment, and they get so locked in that they lose track of where they are
Where they are.
physically.
Yeah.
That is so true because it has happened to me. So that's kind of funny.
It's happened to me. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Or like when you even, I know so many coaches now who says do not pick up your phone the first hour that you wake up. So I try my best, but sometimes I do pick up the phone. And it's so true. When you pick up the phone in the beginning of the morning, you can be there for 40 minutes and not realize that it has been
Yeah.
40
Right.
minutes. And then you have to like put it away and start your day. But it's so true. You have to have a lot more discipline, I feel, with the influence of social media, giving us more and more options, options to look at, options to buy, options to be in places where we wouldn't otherwise be, this virtual world that it gives
Right.
us. It requires a lot more discipline from us to focus on what we want, to learn what we want, and to stay on track. That is so hard to do nowadays with all of this noise around. Like there's so many options, so many things going on. So, how do you focus? Like, where do you get your discipline to do all of it that you just said, like either journaling or carving time for it, or, you know, making sure that you're not there for hours on end. Like, how do you get this discipline to do that?
You have to set your own non-negotiables. You have to set your own rules for yourself because there are certain times where journaling is great. Sometimes it's meditation, and then we speak about this on a lot of our episodes. Um, Carving out the time where you can be present. Find a way to be present in the moment and understand what you're feeling. Sometimes we're so disconnected from our own physicality that we don't realize that our neck's hurting. We don't realize that, our lower backs are having problems, or that, we've been sitting down so long that, your legs don't have blood in them anymore. Like we are so focused, not present in the moment when we're dealing with social media or any sort of consumption like that. So when it becomes uh, like a something in your head goes, oh wait, I've been on here too long. That is your indication that you need to set your own rules for yourself on how to deal with social media. Like for me, morning time is a no-go. I can't do it, or else I'll sit there forever because I'm still in that almost sleep mode. So I'm not really present yet. And I would much rather use the time to go into some, whether meditation or just being a thoughtful moment, and just say, okay, today I'm going to, do X, Y, and Z. Maybe it's just a moment to have affirmations, but once I am awake for real, and then I can decide when I want to dip in. It really is important to stay as grounded and is to stay as present in your moment, in your physical, in your mental, that does not involve social media.
That is such a good tip because I remember Reagan Hillier. She is an amazing coach through Mind Valley. And I think she has other things too. Like she is huge in Costa Rica. She lives in Costa Rica. Shout out to her. She's amazing. But she did, like she has a program that she teaches to people to stay present. And
Yeah.
the way that she does it is she asks people to put an alarm on their phone every hour, and the alarm will say, how do you feel right now? Like, what do you feel in your body right now? And it's an hour, like literally every hour, she asks you to set it up so that every hour when you get that alarm, you take at least 5 minutes to yourself to say, like, am I hurting somewhere? Like, what sensations am I having in my body? Like, how do I feel right now? And to some people, it sounds like a lot, but it really is just 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's really important for you to just take, even a few breaths to check in with yourself because the more you are in your body, the more present you are, the more um, you're training your body to be in the present. And training your body is so important because it's the only way for your body to start doing it automatically, right? The more you train your body to do something, the more you will learn. And so if you teach your body to be in the present moment for at least, 10 hours, every hour, it would be, 18 times in your waking hour. You are essentially training your body to be intentional, to be present in your body. And the benefits of that are, you know, endless because you're giving yourself the opportunity to be in the moment, to be present, to be more intentional with the things that you're doing, and to really remind your body the difference between this virtual world and the reality. Like, this is the reality. This is what I'm living right now. And I have the option to stay here or to go somewhere, but this is always an option. To come
Right.
back to me is always an option.
And if you're training your body and your mind to be present when you do go into social media or when you do go in, it is now you're still present. Once you are focused on being present, then you can be present while you're doing everything and anything. And that's including social media. So if you're in social media and you're seeing something, you're there, you're in the moment, and then you can feel the feelings, and that's great. But at least you're not off in some virtual world. You're here still.
I don't know about that. Like, and I love that you brought that up because that's the danger, right? Yes, you are teaching your body to be present, but you only have 100% energy. And so
Yeah.
if your 100% energy is on watching whatever you're watching, there is no energy left for anything else. So I don't know if that is true for me because there's only 100% energy. And so if you're really paying attention to what you're watching, you're no longer present. You are in whatever you're watching. And it's very hard for people to have an attention where you're paying attention to something and something else. You can't do two things at the same time. But the important part is if you set your alarm, even if you are in
Even if you
this
do.
other
Yeah.
world, it will bring you back at some point because it's going to say, "Hey, what are you doing?"
Right,
And
right.
it's like, "Shoot, I've been here for a few hours or whatever, like for a few minutes." So I don't think that you can escape the fact that you can only pay attention to one thing at a time. Even if people say that it's different, it's not. You can only pay attention to one thing at a time. Your brain cannot do two things at a time. It can only do one. So if you're watching something and if you're in the virtual world, you can be present within that video and you can be intentionally watching something and you can intentionally be learning and gathering information from whatever you're watching, but you cannot be somewhere else. You're present in that moment, learning or watching, paying attention to something. You are present within that, but if you want to be present in your body, you can't do both. You have to turn it off in order to be in your body, if
I
that
see
makes
what you're
sense.
saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, there's always I feel like I'm always still present. Like for example, like if I'm in social media and my husband calls me,
Mhm.
I'll answer him. Like you know what I mean? Like there's you're
Yeah,
still
you will go from
here.
social media
Yeah,
to
like you're still, I'm still here. It's where you put your focus is you're right. If you're focusing on one particular thing, most likely, that's where you'll
that's
be.
where you're present. Yes. But yeah, I think it's important for at least for us to have resources because it's so hard to be in the noise and to be
Yeah,
paying attention to so many things. It's important to have something to pull you out of it,
right. I think that's a
right? Just,
great idea. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
But yeah, those are the influences that I can think of. Like, is there any other influence that you can think? I think nowadays, for example, yesterday I was in a rabbit hole um, because I was looking at conspiracy theories. So many
Amazing.
people have so many conspiracy theories on the internet. And I was like, this is brutal. Like they were talking about very bizarre things that I know for sure are not true. Like, how do you filter the truth from
That's
something
a
that people
great
make
point.
up and want to make it truth?
Hmm. Um, uh, that is a great point. So I find that happens to me a lot when any sort of news pops up or any sort of, yes, there's a conspiracy theories or even just um I will ask myself, do you think this is true? And how does it affect me? Even if that was true, how does that affect me in my world? Is it something that affects me directly? If it doesn't affect me directly, am I feeling a certain emotion because of it? And what is it triggering in me? What is emotion am I feeling here? And then I try to address that exactly because there's a lot of times that we'll get information and there is not a thing we can do about it. Nothing. There's not a thing we can do about it. There's a whole lot going on in the world right now, and I wish there was something that we could do about it individually, Amy.
Yeah.
So I have to say, what can I do? How does it affect me directly at this particular moment? And is there anything that I can do as an individual that might help? And generally, a lot of the time, I'll say there isn't anything I can do. The only thing I could do is to provide a good energy and send love to the world. And that's it. That's all I could do right now.
Mhm.
And if there is ever a time that I could help any more than that, I will. But so that is definitely something that I try to analyze when I do get bombarded with stuff that either doesn't feel true or feels exaggerated or feels wrong or feels slightly twisted. I'll go, does that feel good? Is it something that resonates? Or do I think it's really true? No, I don't think it's true. Or yes, I think it's true. And then how do I feel? So I have to do an analyzation, especially when it comes to stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because I was thinking, I was like, wow, this is so far off. Like it was actually about Michelle Obama. And I had read her book
Yeah.
before, and it was like so horrendous, saying that she's a man,
Yes,
like,
I've heard that one.
and I was like, what is going on to this world?
Yeah.
Like, you can put literally anything out there about you. And it's just so sad. And that was, I think, my cue to leave, my cue to like, okay, like I
Right.
have gone to the wrong rabbit hole. Thank you for showing me this because now I know I have to turn it off.
Right.
Like,
Right.
so I think you're right. I think you have to like also remember that all of the information out there, especially with AI now,
Mm,
try to prove anything to be true when it's not.
right.
And so when you start, wondering if it's true or not, I think that's also a cue to like leave, like that's also a cue of like, don't entertain it. You have the power not to entertain it. You have the
Absolutely.
power to choose, do I want to go into this or do I want to like turn and learn something else?
So, I
Like,
mean, how
so
does that affect you? So, and this is like for me, let's just say Michelle Obama, that was the truth, right? How does that affect me? It doesn't. One way or the other, it doesn't affect me in the slightest. So
I
how,
think it affects me in the sense that I am a woman and the same way that this was done to a woman in such an important position, a woman who has written about being pregnant with her
yeah,
children on a book and how distorted something
yes,
can happen, and you have no control over. I think that's how it affects me personally, is like learning that anything is actually possible. Anybody can make anything up about you,
Right, right.
especially if you are famous. People can literally distort the truth and use any information they have as proof, even if it's not true. And so
Right.
for me, I think that's how it affected me. It's like, wow, like it can happen to anybody as long as you possibly don't like them or you have something against them. And you can start a theory and,
Yeah. So it,
you
it
know,
just brought a realization. It wasn't the theory. It was just that the realization that this could happen like to anybody. Anyone can say anything about anybody and
yeah,
make stuff up, and especially with AI and making up pictures and stuff, anyone can make this up. So yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense to me. That that's the case. But in my head, I'm going, does that feel like a true statement to me? To me, that doesn't
mm,
feel like a true statement to me. So I can distinguish from myself, even
mm,
though it's something that is on, social media or in your face. Is that something that's true? It didn't feel true to me, so then I could just move on.
that's great to hear. Because, like, for me, even if it's like it doesn't feel true or it feels true, like, I still like to base things on evidence and facts.
Yeah,
And I don't know if I would feel a certain way if I had not read her book.
right,
Had I not have read her book, would I think differently? But because I read her book, I'm like, that's insane. Like, I can't
right.
believe people, like,
Right.
um, but the fact that people can even plant an idea that is not true is really scary. Like, I have a 10-year-old and it's just scary to me,
Yeah,
the possibilities of AI, the possibilities of influence on social media, and what it can do to somebody. It can build people, but it can also destroy others.
yes.
And so I think that that's a really scary place to be. I have seen a few news of girls who have, they have used their faces, and then they completely AI'd their bodies
Oh my
and
gosh.
projected pictures of them when
Yeah,
it wasn't them at
right,
all. You
right,
know, all of a sudden they don't want to go to school because these photos came out and they know for sure it's not their body, but they plugged in their face with somebody else's body. And so things like that, like, it's so scary to know the
yeah,
influence of social media in that way because you can literally do anything nowadays. And so you have to be so careful as to what is it that you're doing, how you're putting your pictures out there, like how are you protecting your information, how you're protecting your photos.
right.
It's very hard because there is very little protection now. Like everything is out there and data is being sold. And so that type of influence is very scary. And we have to be very cautious about, the community that we're in, like reminding our children
Yeah,
that this is all a virtual world, and what is the impact of it, and who are you really? Like, sometimes people are not who they are on the internet at all. And so it's it it's very scary to know that any type of information can be used against you, that any
right.
type of information can be misplaced, misunderstood, and it can really change someone's life. And so I think that's how it impacted me, like seeing, you know, not the truth being displayed in such a hateful
Yeah,
way, to know that that's possible, entertained. So that kind of makes me sad about it.
definitely. And bringing the children into it is very difficult too. Being very careful of what you post and pictures you post. Protect your children because you don't know what's going to happen. And then educate them because I think that children may take a look at this and listen to anything that they see and take it as fact when maybe educating them to have discernment, or does this resonate with you? Does it, or curating what they see or how much time and exposure that they have to it. It's a lot of a different world from when my kids were growing up. So I really put out kudos to all the parents out there now just navigating this for you especially. 10 years old is one a difficult age to begin with, and then to have all of these influences is not an easy thing. So I just wanted to you know, to say that because it's not
Yeah,
an easy
no.
thing.
And I think like the worst part is now, like she's going to middle school. I think middle school is rough
Mhm.
and on its own, without any influence of social media, let alone when you do add that,
Yeah.
you know, it it really shapes kids, identities, how they feel about their body, how they feel about themselves, and how others feel about themselves. So
Yeah.
you're right. Like I think educating the children to understanding who they are, understanding what's important to them, so that the influences of social media doesn't affect them negatively, if
Yes.
anything, positively. So,
And teaching
um,
them this, and I think that there's a positive nature to social media and a positive nature to AI as well, as long as they're used as tools, as long as they're used as ways for us to enhance our life or to be able to help us streamline something, or get information, like how to's. We have this beautiful technology right now, and it's leaps and bounds. I mean, every year more and more stuff comes out. So being very intentional and being able to look at it and take the perspective of I'm going to use AI as a tool to help me do this, or I'm going to use social media as a way to maybe get my message out or to be able to send love to the world. That's going to be my viewpoint. And as long as your perspective of what those applications are very deep rooted in you, then maybe it won't affect you in a way that would be negative.
yeah, I love that. This is great. I mean, I love talking to you about everything, but
I know.
like I think it's important, about social media and the influence of it. I'm just glad that social media also gave us the opportunity to continue to connect to people
Yeah.
and continue to support, like our friends and family and whatever it is that they're doing. It's great to see people growing, um, and developing themselves and learning new ways, to do their business. And
Yeah.
it's a great thing if you use it well, and I think
That's
I'm
it. Right.
very grateful that I have used it incorrectly, correctly, and everything in between.
Yes.
And I have so much more to learn. But I think it's, right now we have a platform. We have many platforms that helps us, really show the world and our friends who we are and what we're doing and what we're about. And I think that's a beautiful thing. So let's end it a positive note.
Absolutely. So I'm grateful for it because without the technology, we would have never met. And just being able to show ourselves to the world in a way because we have a mission. I have my own mission, you have your own mission, and ultimately we just want to help people. So if we could use social media for that, then awesome. Positivity.
For sure. Well, we'll see you guys next time. I hope you enjoy it. Have a wonderful week. Bye.